Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. This is going to be a video mostly for the hometown crowd, but the rest of you around the country might want to pay attention because I think you could probably do something similar with numbers in your jurisdiction. We talk all the time about how gun control is not about the guns. It is about control, which is actually why we call it here at this channel civilian disarmament. And I've also said that, it really is the only type of crime when we have gun crimes where suddenly the criminal activity is actually blamed on the inanimate object in the person's hand rather than the person standing behind the trigger. And as a matter of fact, it really is the only crime for whatever reason that we actually deal with it in that fashion. I'm going to share with you some really troubling data that's coming out of Washington State as it relates to what's going on our roadways. And I want to compare how the state is reacting to that versus how they react to the data as it relates to gun violence in Washington State and prove to you once and for all the obvious hypocrisy in Washington's gun control laws. Okay, so this is what we're talking about today. As we know, last summer we had a magazine ban shoved down our throat, and this summer we had an assault weapon ban shoved down our throat. Now, this is all under the guise to save lives, because anytime we have a gun violence problem in the state of Washington, the problem is the gun. It's like the gun just walks into a place all by itself and shoots the place up all on its own. We never focus on the individual standing behind the trigger, the demented individual who commits these horrific acts. And this is not unique to Washington State, because when we take a look at gun violence issues across the nation, anytime we have a mass shooting, anytime we have gun violence, there is a whole segment of our population that thinks that the problem is actually caused by the gun. Now, let's take a look at another real major safety issue that we have in this country. It's not unique to Washington State. We have this problem all over the place, and that is death and violence on our highways. Because, I hate to tell you this, but we slaughter way too many people on our highways. And in Washington State, we have been seeing an alarming trend. And if you don't believe me that it's an alarming trend, I want you to take a look at this data right here. This is from the Washington State Traffic Safety Commission, okay? This supposedly is the gospel on this stuff, but take a look at this again. This is the number of fatalities that we are seeing on Washington State roadways over the last few years. And that graph, as you can see, is moving in the wrong direction. Now, if we took the same approach to trying to solve all of this horrific carnage going on the roadway as we do with guns, would not our approach then be to ban all the cars? Because that's not what I'm hearing here in Washington State. We certainly want to ban gas-burning cars for other reasons, but we are not talking about banning the automobile. Now, here's the other thing, the more insidious thing, and we've talked about this before too, is that, when you take a look at the United States Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice's own statistics on this video right here, we talk about how 88.8% of all gun crimes committed in the United States are actually committed by a person who's unlawfully possessing the firearm at the time the crime is committed. So therefore, we have an identifiable demographic group for which we could write laws to affect that demographic group, right? Yes, we do. However, what we do is we write 100% of our gun laws to affect all people like you, the lawful and responsible gun owner. Now, when we get further into this data right here and we take a look at what the hell is happening on Washington State roadways, this is what else we learn. 30% of the crashes involved alcohol-impaired drivers. 37% involved those who tested positive for drugs, and another 28% were speeding. Now, if we just take a look at the numbers of those that were impaired by alcohol and those that were impaired by drugs, we now account for 2 out of every 3 fatal collisions on Washington roadways, okay? And then, if we take all of those that are impaired by alcohol, and all those that are impaired by drug, and all of those that were driving too fast and combine them, guess what? We now account for 95% of all fatalities on Washington roadways. And the other 5% are probably what I like to call just crazy fluke accidents, which is unfortunate, but unfortunately, that's the way the world works sometimes. Now, here's what we know. We have the identifiable demographic group that's causing the problem on the roadways. They are impaired drivers, whether it's alcohol or drugs or speeding. Now, what has Washington State done about that? Well, actually, Washington State has attempted to address that issue because they raised the penalties for vehicular homicide when it's caused by a person who's driving impaired, and they raised the penalties for vehicular homicide for those that are driving recklessly when an accident occurs and someone dies. They also stiffened the penalties for vehicular assault under both the alcohol, the drug, and the driving in a reckless manner fashion. So the state legislature has taken a look at these numbers and at least attempted to pass laws that go after that particular demographic group. Now, one of the other reasons why I believe that we are seeing a marked increase in these types of collisions is that we have, for whatever reason in Washington State, decided to do away with proactive policing. We have multiple police departments that are down considerably in numbers, including the Washington State Patrol, the agency which is most frequently tasked with keeping our highways safe. And they fired hundreds of troopers just a couple of years ago because they had the audacity to make an independent health decision, and they have not replenished the State Patrol since that time. So we know what the problem is. We know what the identifiable demographic group is that's creating the problem. But do we see anybody in Olympia screaming, ban the cars, ban the booze, ban the drugs? No, they're not doing any of that, okay? Instead, they're actually writing laws that theoretically address the problem. But anytime we have gun violence in this state, what do? Well, we got to ban the guns. We got to ban the guns. The guns are the problem. And we never, ever, ever hold the individual standing behind the trigger to the same level of accountability that we hold the drunk driver to that goes out on the freeway and slaughters a family. And let us also remember that in all of these years that the Washington State Legislature has been cracking down on you, the lawful and responsible gun owner, what are we seeing? We are seeing violent crime and homicide numbers escalate year by year. It proves several points that we articulate all the time on this channel. Number one, gun control is not about the guns. It is about the control, and that's why it is called civilian disarmament. Number two, the obvious hypocrisy that comes from Olympia in dealing with some of society's biggest issues is oftentimes glaring as it is in this case. In one instance, we actually can identify what the problem is, and we write laws to address that problem. But in the other instance, when we can identify what the problem is, no, we write arms to disarm and disempower the citizens of this state. Listen, you may have more questions about this or anything else going on with what's left of our Second Amendment rights. Now, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now, but if you don't, that's okay. That information is right down there in the description box. Now, in the meantime, I want you all to remember that part of being a lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.